Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Tavern Talk. Yeah, you can go ahead and applause a little bit. We got something. Yay, thank you. There you go. We're down here live at Tarnation Tavern, and I want to thank Fred and Colleen. Yes, right now. We just went live. We're live now. So we have our home studios are testing it right now, so we should be. Well, it should be right now because, hold on. I mean, we're going to check. We're good. Yes, ma'am. We're good to go. All right. We just had to check the home studios, Jeff, to make sure that we were actually streaming. Right. And it looks like we are. We're going out to 9 billion potential customers right here on planet Earth. I hope we get 10. Let's see. Tavern Talk. Jeff, I don't know where this is going. I mean, I put this out there. I think we have a lot of important things to talk about in our community. Last week, Tim Burns and myself, we talked about clocks in sports. We had a good time with that. I don't know how interesting it is. And then after that, I went back and rewatched that, Jeff. I think we have maybe a format where we could take things in our community and discuss them, things that are of importance. And what came to mind as I turn the news on every day or every top of the hour news, banking. And I'm like, I think I know somebody. And I think it would be good to discuss banking and maybe talk a little bit, Jeff, about what we hear in the news, every top of the hour news on the radio, and maybe dispel some rumors tonight, talk about what we saw, what happened, and then talk about our local banking institutions and that people should feel pretty good in River Falls about what's going on with banking. How about that?
That sounds good, Kevin. First of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I'm not sure if this will be as interesting as the high school 35-second shot clock discussion.
I don't know, right?
But we'll do our best to try to clear things up as far as what's happening right now in our industry.
It's a pretty serious thing, and I think the people that are going to be tuning in are going to want to learn. And we're here to talk to them a little bit about banking. And we got the guy here, President and CEO, just like it says on your screen, of First National Bank of River Falls. I'm going to take off our nameplates. Hold on, because I'm producing this show as well as talking. So hold on. All right, let's just dive right in. So the last week and a half, 2 weeks, we've heard all about Silicon Valley Bank and how this was going to start some national and global banking meltdown. Now, like you, and you're way deeper in the weeds on it than I am, but from what I've saw, from what I've heard, from the people I've talked to, I'm not getting the feeling that this is going to be a widespread deal. I think what we had going on there was, a lot of people with a lot of big money, a lot of people with millions and millions of dollars. That's one start. I think, 2, the internet, Twitter, social media can stoke fears, and people can get irrationally emotional about what's going on. And third, I think with the use of the phone, people are able to transfer money very, very quickly, and you can have big sums of money trying to leave your institution in a very short amount of time. I think it was $46 billion that tried to leave Silicon Valley Bank, and that was not like the run on the bank we saw in It's a Wonderful Life where people showed up. This is people on their phones transferring out $6, $7, $10, $20, $30 million at one time, and that caused the problem, fueled by Twitter. Jeff, where did I miss?
No, I think that sums it up. I think what I'd like to do is maybe try to compare the 2 big banks that failed, Silicon Valley Bank and also Signature Bank, and compare them to, what we see on Main Street in the small towns, like River Falls, and clear up the misconceptions, like you said.
Right, yeah, let's do that.
First of all, the 2 large banks, and I think we'll probably focus more on Silicon Valley Bank than anything, they're so much different than banks such as First National, and I'll apologize off the bat. I'm going to refer to First National Bank a lot because that's where I work.
Yeah, and that's fine. And let me just build on that. So we have Jeff here tonight from First National Bank, but But and you're not going to speak on behalf of the other banks, but I think the other banks and credit unions can kind of probably have the same feel as you do. I'm
Correct.
guessing.
Yeah, and we'll draw some comparisons for sure. Silicon Valley Bank, for example, we'll start with them. They're out of California. They've only been around for about 40 years. They started in 1983. Their total asset number was, before they failed, was $209 billion. That's
209 with a B.
That's with a B,
That's
not
with a B.
not an M.
B.
That's one thing to focus on. The other thing is that of all of their deposits, 94% of them were uninsured. So what that means is that FDIC insurance provides you up to $250,000 of insurance for your deposits. So 94% of their deposits were above that insurance limit.
Right.
Which you don't see in community banks.
Correct. So what is the reason for that? Do people just blindly put money in, or are these other businesses with $6 million a week payrolls and it gets caught up in there? What do you think it is?
Well, it's a mega bank basically out of California. They cater to tech companies, venture capital companies, and their depositors just have big dollars that they have on deposit, way above the insurance limits.
So they knew the rules up to 250, but they put in 650,000 or 6.5 million
or higher than that.
Right.
Even.
Where were their concerns? Why weren't they concerned? They think they were too big to fail, or what? Why weren't they concerned about?
Well,
that?
And that's kind of how it turned out as we kind of go through this, but they didn't have concerns until interest rates started changing, which I'll get into in a second. How that compares to your local community bank, First National Bank, for example, we are a $325 million bank with an M, not a B.
Still a good-sized bank,
It's a good size. It's in the top 35-40% in Wisconsin in size. But you compare that to Silicon Valley, we're 0.1% of their size. And you may wonder, okay, how many of their deposits or our deposits are uninsured? Less than 10%.
Less than 10%.
Yeah. So what that tells you is that most community banks like ours, we cater to mom and dad and their family. We cater to the small businesses throughout our community. We don't have any exposure to crypto companies or venture capital companies like Silicon Valley did. So. And again, we're a bank that's been around for 119 years now, and it's been the business models are just completely different, from us compared to Silicon Valley. But the press, like you mentioned, kind of lumps all banks into the same.
Oh, they easily do that, right? Banking. All people here is banking. I'm sure there are people that have been watching the news in the last 2 weeks. They're wondering, is it my bank?
Correct.
And this is why we're here tonight, Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. And what happened there is word got out that the bank was having some issues, and like you said, it kind of perpetuated through social media and the press and everything else, and it created a classic run on the bank.
Yes.
And rightfully so, the depositors who had uninsured money were concerned.
Yes.
Because those funds were potentially exposed and not insured, so they withdrew a ton of money in a hurry. This only took a week or two,
right?
And what happened is they didn't have the funds to pay out all their depositors, so the government ended up taking the bank over, and the bank failed.
So another common question amongst my friends is, aren't there regulators? Who do they report to? I'm assuming you have a board. You have state regulation and federal regulation. I'm assuming, Jeff.
There are, and it's a whole different regulatory structure compared to what a community bank sees.
Yeah.
We're regulated by the OCC. They do a really nice job of keeping tabs on us, meeting with us regularly, coming into our bank every 18 months or so.
And you take their advice, I'm assuming.
We do. I mean, I used to be a regulator myself, Kevin.
Right.
That's how I got started in banking. I worked for FDIC for 7 years, so I have an appreciation for what they do, and they're in reality they're trying to help.
So this is an assumption on my part, but I'm assuming the big bank, Silicon Valley Bank, they must have had some of the regulators peeking under the hood probably throwing up a few red flags potentially that maybe they ignored or took lightly. Is that potentially?
I think that's very possible. I mean, without being there, it's hard to say, but
yeah,
given how everything turned out there, I think that's fairly likely. I have a hard time believing the regulators were asleep at the switch with this thing.
Right.
So,
I was thinking of an analogy on that. Being the utility director in town, Jeff, I can imagine like the DNR regulates our water system, and then having them write me a letter, correct this in your water system. Well, then I don't hear from them from a year, so I don't correct it thinking it's just going to go away. And then a problem arises. I'm going to be in big trouble because I didn't respond to their suggestions at the regulatory level. And then someone's also going to want to blame the regulators because they didn't follow up.
Correct.
So it's more than one person to blame here. It's the regulators maybe didn't push it, but it's also the people running the bank who didn't react to the suggestions.
Oh, and and they're basically operating, like I said, with a lot of what we call in the industry hot money. Money that kind of comes and goes quickly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of risk involved in that, and I'll compare it back to what we do at First National. We have well over 90% of our customers fall under the insurance limits.
Right.
So they don't have anything to worry about as far as their money being safe.
Right.
One thing of everything I say tonight, Kevin, the one thing I want to make really clear that if you remember one thing that I say, it's that no depositor has ever lost $1 of their money that was insured by the FDIC. It's never happened in the 90 years of FDIC
banking.
Existence.
Banking. Well, so there's, again, if you stop watching right now, there's one good takeaway that if you have less than 250, not one person has ever not been insured for the money in the banks.
That's correct. And if you have more than that, obviously we'd like to have, we'd love to have you as well. There's different ways we can structure and title your deposits so that they, if you came in and took out.
How about a husband and wife for
yes,
$500?
Yep, exactly. That's doable for sure. You can set up trusts and things like that. That'll also be covered. And then if you have beyond that money, we're involved in this network with about 3,000 other banks throughout the country where it's kind of like a clearinghouse exchange where you exchange deposits back and forth so that you can keep under these insurance limits. We can go all the way up to $150 million per customer, and obviously we don't have anybody anywhere near that.
That'd be nice.
So
go ahead and sign up.
That'd be nice. Yep, exactly. So I think bottom line is if you're worried about deposit insurance, we have the tools that can help you out with that.
And I'm assuming there's individual meetings going on with those customers, advising them. I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Yep. No, we're happy to meet with anybody that is concerned about that, and we have a lot of experts at the bank, and again, all the community banks do too. They all know how to basically structure your funds to maximize your deposit insurance.
So what other differences are there between big banks and local banks, the good and the bad? Have we missed anything? Did we kind of hit on it? Or what's your opinion on really the difference?
Well, this might be a little simplistic, but if you want to know whether you're in a big bank or in a community bank, let's say, is ask to see the CEO.
Right.
Walk in there and say, hey, can I talk to the CEO? If you get a look on their face like, oh, I don't know, he's never here, or he's in a different, then you're probably you're in a big bank.
That's a red flag. That's a bigger bank.
That's a bigger bank where the control is somewhere else. If that makes sense. Like here in River Falls, River Falls State Bank is another community bank. Todd Schultz does a really good job over there, along with his staff. You walk in there, ask to see Todd. Todd will see you.
Yeah.
You walk into First National, ask to see me. Love to talk to you. So that's kind of the difference. I mean, there's a lot of other differences too. In a community bank, things are done locally. Decisions are made locally. If you want to come in for a loan and you want an answer quickly, you'll get it at a community bank because the decision is made locally. It's not made in California or by some loan committee in Texas or wherever. It's done here. So I think that to me, there's value to that. And again, I'm biased because I work at a community bank, but I think there's a lot of value to that in knowing that this is the person I need to talk to get my questions answered.
So I thought a little bit about that side of things, and I think about it from utility business as well. I do think there are, moving back 10, 15 years, when the internet really took off and people were able to do more things online, I think people were lumping things like banks as one where that's all going to be online. You don't need people. And it's turning out there are, I think, 4 key industries where they were going to go online. You still need people. 1 is banking. 2 is insurance.
Yep.
3, I think, utility companies. And there's one more along those same lines where, did I say real estate already? I don't know if I did or not.
You didn't.
In real estate. Those are 4 that I think 10, 15 years ago, people said, well, that's all going to be online. They won't need people. But I think you were alluding to it. That's what made me talk about it. There's still this thing about going to see somebody, sitting down across from them, having things explained, shake a hand, make a relationship.
Well, especially when it comes to people's money.
Yes.
I mean, that's about as sacred as it gets.
Right.
And that's, people want to know that their money's safe.
Right.
And people want to know who's responsible for keeping the money safe.
Yes.
And that's why there is that value of knowing, hey, my money's at First National.
No.
I know the people that run the bank. I know how they manage it. I know how they care about the community. They're gonna. I know their reputation. They've been around for 119 years. So
it isn't intangible, but you're going to go meet and see somebody at the bank, and they are personally going to take care of your business should you need that personal attention.
Right, and you'll see the same people when you go in there every time.
Yeah.
Too, and that's another sign that you're in a bigger bank is you walk in there, and then 3 months later you walk in again, and there's an entirely different group of people.
New people.
So.
I think it's the same thing with real estate. Yeah, you can go buy houses and sell houses online, but there's still something nice about having that agent to handhold, be that conduit of information, develop that relationship with somebody you know and trust. We keep our utility offices open for the same reason. It's still nice to be able to have someone have an issue or pay a bill and see somebody in person. I mean, it seems a little bit old school, but I think in this day and age, I think those things are important.
No, I agree,
right?
And that's one of the things that I'm really proud of our staff at First National. We have numerous employees that have been there over 40 years, which there's a lot of value to that for the customer knowing who those people are that are taking care of them. And
have you taken any phone calls on this issue?
We have. I would say less than a dozen. I think it mostly happened the first couple of days after Silicon Valley Bank failed, and the net result for us, and I've talked to other people in our industry as well, and they've basically had the same thing, is it's been a good thing for First National Bank. We've actually seen our deposit levels increase about 1.5% since since 2 weeks ago when this whole thing happened, and so I don't want to say it's been a complete non-event because we have had a few questions, but we haven't had anybody pull money out because of it. And they've actually put money in because, and I think a lot of it goes back to what we just talked about. The reputation of community banks, the fact that they know the people, they know their money's safe, etc. So.
Right, and too as a business leader in town, and then the president and CEO of your bank, and running the utilities, I take these types of situations that could be a negative, and I turn it into an opportunity. Right now, this is your opportunity to actually engage your customers, make them feel confident in your bank and the banking situation. So you can take what potentially could have been a negative and turn it into a positive.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's what we've done over the last couple of weeks, certainly from our own social media posts that we've done, is we've pointed out the fact, hey, we've been around here for 119 years. We've got excellent ratings from our regulatory agencies. We've been a safe, sound, conservatively run bank for forever, and I think those things are important to people, and sometimes they're taken for granted a little bit until something like this happens.
Right, people do, but that's a compliment to you too, that you are running a good bank, so it's invisible to people, and they just assume things are being done and being done right.
Right, exactly. And we've also tried to leverage this to point out okay, here's why we are different than Silicon Valley Bank. We give back to our community. Our employees are out there volunteering for, community organizations, for school events, for churches, etc. We're out there donating for certain things.
Right.
And
no, I've seen that. So on that note, I was talking to somebody recently. I said, we don't really have the big philanthropists in River Falls. There's not the three families that are always giving the millions and $2 and $3 million. But what we do have are local banks and local business people who do give back to the community. I see, banks' names on, whether it be the UW, River Falls Gymnasium or their football field, to the baseball field, to youth sports, to State Bank being on the gymnastics facility. So the banks, in a way, are kind of the philanthropist arm of our community, in a way.
Yep, the River Falls Sports YouTube Network. That's another one,
right
too.
There, the YouTube Network. All those great sports that get broadcast thanks to First National Bank.
Yep, exactly. I mean, it's all over the place. Chippewa Valley Technical College. I know the banks help them out as well, in addition to the University of Wisconsin River Falls. Like you said, the schools. So yeah, we do what we can. And the reason we do that, Kevin, is that, our communities have done so much for us as financial institutions, and I think that's the least we can do as a bank, as a company, is to try to give back to our communities. Yeah. So that's one thing we really stress, and I know the other community banks do so as well.
So that's all great news, and I think people should feel confident. I don't have many zingers tonight on our list. I did hear one of the Congress people ask Janet Yellen last week. He said, "Hey, if you have over $250,000 in the bank, why would I keep it in a local bank? Put it in a big bank that's going to get bailed out, and not the local bank." I think that's kind of a gotcha question, and probably not much truth to that. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. What happened at Silicon Valley Bank is they ended up supporting all of the people that had money above the $250,000, and I kind of have mixed feelings about that. I get why they did it. Obviously, it would have been devastating to a lot of companies that banked there, that had to pay their employees. That had money sitting there above the insurance limits.
It's a lot of businesses in a small area that probably would have had a hard time, and it would have affected a ton of people. So too big to fail, is it a real thing?
It is a real thing. It hasn't been a real thing since probably 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. But I think it was kind of back now in this situation. It'll be interesting to see what happens going forward, because obviously that money's got to come from somewhere to do that. And I think kind of a misconception in the past is like, the government's going to bail them out.
And again, who's the government? It's you and I. And
it's not the government. That money comes from bank assessments is where it comes from. Banks are assessed every...
Well, this is new to me. I'm learning right now.
Banks are assessed by the FDIC to pay for this deposit insurance. It's not just free.
Not just taxpayer money.
Exactly. So I think what's the likely end result of this is that bank insurance assessments will end up increasing. Yeah, and it'll be across the board to cover things like this. So.
Sure. So do you think it's going to calm down now at the large banks? Do you think the federal government has their hands around this at this point?
I hope so. I know we have a regulator out in the crowd there, so we should probably be asking him. He's gonna hit the road here in a second. Now that I called him out, whether something else could happen, I think it's very possible. Right. I don't think as a banker we can let our guard down about this, but really it's been pretty quiet over the last couple of weeks since this happened. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. So I wouldn't assume that this is the last bank failure that's going to take place this year. But I think what is important to point out too is that the number of bank failures throughout the country have been very, very low over the last 10 years or so. And we're talking 2-3 a year.
Right.
So
not many,
which is a really low number.
So I have a few bullet points left. Again,
Yeah.
try to lighten this up a little bit. There's a few conspiracy theorists out there thinking this is a grand scheme to take this country in another direction. Is this an appetite? Is this a direction because somebody has an appetite for a cashless society?
I don't think that's. I think they're two separate things. Is what you're talking about, a cashless society. I do think we're heading in that direction for sure. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, we at our bank and at every bank, we're certainly seeing less checks written for one thing. Mm-hmm. More people are paying with their cards for sure. Debit cards. We do so much debit card business. People prefer to carry that around instead of cash.
I don't carry cash too often.
I don't either. And you talk to the younger people than you and I, like our kids.
Yeah.
They never have any cash with them.
Yeah.
They just don't carry it. They carry their debit cards or a credit card, and it's just changed. We don't go through as much cash at the bank as we used to. We certainly carry much less. And you think about it. Remember, I've been in banking for 36 years now, I guess it is. Back then, when you'd walk in a bank, you'd see 10 teller windows.
Yes.
And you just don't see that anymore.
No, now it's
we
three
have
or four.
3 or 4.
Yeah.
And that's a good-sized bank. You'll see 3 or 4. Some you'll see 1 or 2. And it's because cash isn't used as much anymore. Mm-hmm. People are banking online. Yep. People are banking with their phone.
Right, Venmo. And give your kids money. Just Venmo them the $25 for pizza.
Yep, exactly. Or Zelle or whatever.
Zelle.
And people are doing that, and that's what the young people are doing. So as banks, we've had to adapt to that.
Sure.
And, and I think the pandemic kind of helped that along a little bit too. Our lobby traffic has gone down since the pandemic. More people are using the drive up now instead of the, coming in the lobby.
Sure.
And people kind of got used to it.
Right.
And they just kept doing it. So it's, but yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for
moving
in that direction. In fact, there's a lot of places you go into, they don't even take cash. They say, "Oh no, we only take a card." And it's like, "Oh, okay."
I find it difficult for tipping because I don't carry cash, and then you got to leave $5. I don't have it on me.
Yep,
it
exactly.
happens when I was golfing in Arizona. They always the guy always wipes off your clubs after the 18th hole. I'm always trying to sneak out the back so he doesn't grab my clubs because I don't have cash.
Because you don't have any money. Yeah, exactly. Cash. You almost got to remember to bring it to certain places.
Right.
So, I mean, I would think, concessions at the high school at a sporting event. That's one of the things where. Yeah. But beyond that, when I'm doing something with my kids, I don't carry a lot of cash around anymore.
Hey, what other changes have you seen in banking in the last 10 years that are kind of like maybe surprised you or things you were expecting?
I think a lot of the things we just talked about. Certainly, I think the one thing that you didn't see a lot of 10 years ago is if you need a loan, you'd have to come into the bank, and we're a lot of our loan customers right now do it all online. Mm-hmm. They apply for their loan online, like their mortgage. Mm-hmm. They go through that whole process. They'll come into bank for the closing at the end, but that's about it. And that's been a big change throughout the industry, for sure. That we just didn't really see a whole lot of 10 years ago. So.
Right. Interest rates. Let's just hit that. So it's probably slowing down the housing market a little bit from your vantage point, or not too much?
Yeah, I think part of it is that. I think you think back the last several years. Mortgage rates were in the threes?
Threes, yeah.
I mean, the 15 years got into the twos.
Right.
Now it's back. It's still, if you look at historically, exactly, the last 30 years, it's still in a pretty good place. The 30 years in the low sixes, the 15 years in the fives, and that's obviously much higher than what it was over the last couple of years. But historically, like you said, it's still in a good place. I think it's that, but there's also certainly in River Falls and in our markets, there's just not a big supply.
Right.
Of
supply. So I think nationally too, the supply of houses is under a million. I think it's like 685,000 or something like that. But historically, just for context, in 2008 there were 4.3 million homes available.
Exactly.
So we're less than 0.25% of the amount of homes available for sale today, which will help the market not collapse too quickly, I'm guessing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I think you're seeing people stay in their homes maybe a little bit longer than they would have, and In River Falls, we've seen certainly a huge uptick in apartments that have gone up as well, and they're filling up. So.
There is, I knew somebody recently looking for an apartment in town. They can't find one.
Right.
So the demand is definitely here, but be expected to pay a pretty good price as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But
and it's just high school economics, supply and demand, for sure.
It pretty much is in play. So what things do you see on the horizon that we should be aware of?
One thing I kind of wanted to get across tonight a little bit is what we see a lot of in our bank, and I know everybody else is seeing it as well, is just an uptick in fraud. And I think that's only going to probably get worse before it gets better. What we're seeing now a lot of is elder abuse, where these sinister groups are preying upon the elderly and meeting them online, trying to get them to sign up for things that they shouldn't be signing up for.
What's the takeaway for that for anybody listening that might be in that category? If it feels too good to be true, it probably is, and don't give any private information over the phone or
exactly,
online.
Yeah, and it's basic stuff like don't click links that you don't know where they go to, and if somebody asks you to either send them some gift cards or send them some Bitcoin,
Don't do it.
Don't do it because it's, that's untraceable. Once you send those off to somebody, and we've seen that. We've seen a lot of romance scams. Same deal. Somebody will kind of prey on someone online that is single, and say, "Oh yeah, I'll come over to meet you," but I need some money. Or the whole Publishers Clearinghouse thing, which we've seen a lot, where
in order to get the money, you have to give us this number,
send us money for shipping, and we'll deliver it to your house, and it never shows up.
The old rule that our parents always told us: if it feels too good to be true, it probably is.
It is. I tell my kids that all the time.
It probably is. It probably is. So don't be doing that.
Absolutely.
Anything else on that? People should be aware of?
No, I think those are the key. Those are the key things. Is just be really, really careful. Make sure you know who you're talking to. Don't click links, like I said, and
sign up for your fraud alerts. I do.
Yes.
And I get them once in a while. So
yes, exactly. And I've, my kids have had their debit cards hacked already. And the fraud alerts caught that.
They do
before something bad happens. So, just be careful and just be careful with your private information, obviously, and don't give that out to people you don't know.
So we kind of hit on this already. Let's just visit it one more time. What role do local banks play in the economy of a small town?
Well, I think it's huge, Kevin. I think, the fact that for our bank, for example, most of the loans we make are either to small businesses in River Falls or Prescott, where we have a bank as well. We help them fund their operations. We help them add an addition to their building or expand their services, etc. So I think that's a huge role that banks play in the local economy, and I think also families as well, like we touched on earlier. We help them buy their homes. If they want to start their own business, if they want to buy a car or a boat, whatever, put their kid through school. Those are all things that we do that certainly help the local economy. And I think, if there weren't community banks around, I don't think local businesses would be able to thrive the way that they are. They'd have to look somewhere else to get their their needs met, and if they don't know their banker, that's not always easy.
Right. I was going to go there. Can you imagine a town without a local bank or credit union? What would that town look like?
Well, and there's some, and you'll see that occasionally, where a community bank gets bought by a bigger bank, and typically what you see happen is the amount of community support goes way, way down.
Yeah.
Because they're not invested.
Correct.
In the community like the bank that's been around for 119 years.
Correct.
So.
No, it's a great give and take. Local banks investing back into their community, helping local businesses, being there for the families that want to live their life in our town. It's a great stabilizer for a community.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm really proud of all of our staff that does everything they can to get involved in our community and not just show up for work from 8 to 5. They're out there at night, volunteering for, like I said, school, church, arts, music, sporting events, etc.
I saw the one commercial you had showed how many hours annually that are contributed. It's astronomical.
Yeah,
so.
it was over 3,000 last year, and that's one thing when we meet new employees when they start at the bank, and I sit down and talk to them, and they say, well, what should I get involved in?
Mm-hmm.
And we always just tell people, follow your passion.
There you go.
If you're going to get involved in something, make sure you really want to do it and you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Like me, for example, I enjoy hanging out with you on Friday nights doing announcing high school football games or basketball games.
That could be a whole nother episode, Jeff, and the episode is going to be called Why.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, why do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole episode. We can talk about that.
Oh gosh,
sometime.
yeah, giving back.
Right, and doing something you found out something you like to do. And
it's fun.
Think you can make a difference in your community with my short time on this planet. So this is why we're doing
exactly.
it.
It doesn't feel like work for sure.
No, not at all. This is good. So I'm down to my last, just maybe question and a half here.
Sure.
What opportunities and challenges do you see ahead for First National Bank and the other banking institutions in town?
Well, I think the opportunity we touched on a little bit earlier, is to try to, and a show like this and some of our marketing efforts will help with that too, is just to point out the differences between community banks and the bigger banks like Silicon Valley Bank, for example. But, I think the challenges that we're going to have is, customers are going to expect that we're going to be able to or need to offer the same products and services that the bigger banks do. So, those are things that are expected out of community banks and things that we'll need to continue to do. We're going to have to continue to promote our niche, which is, being out there, local service, local decision making, community service, giving back, etc. That's what we try to do. Things that we've done over the last year or two is, if you want a debit card, in the past you'd have to wait about a week for us to mail it or mail it to you. And now you can get it while you're waiting in the.
I did notice that
it takes 10 minutes.
Yes.
And you can walk out of there and it works and you're all set and ready to go. So it's that quick, efficient service that I think community banks are going to need to continue to meet the challenge for that.
So what am I missing, Jeff? The goal tonight was to breed some confidence into our local community about our local banking and credit union systems. I think you've done that. What am I missing?
I don't think anything. I think the key is if you're going to bank somewhere, try to get to know your banker.
You're available. So
I'm available.
If someone watches this and they're throwing the BS flag at us tonight, you can come in and call Jeff and see Jeff tomorrow.
Absolutely. And I know the other community banks the same thing as well. So they're, get to know your banker, can explain to you why this is a good place for you to keep your money. And again, I mentioned it earlier. If you have less than $250,000, which most people do, I don't know too many people that have more than that.
And if so, it's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. But if you do, and your money's invested in a community bank, and you have it on deposit there, you have absolutely nothing to worry about.
We have some investors in town, and through maybe what's the agency, Edward D. Jones or something like that.
Sure.
If you got $250, you can send them over there.
Well, we'd rather have you come over by us. But
I was thinking if you had $250 cash laying around, you can put that to work maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So no, we'd love to have you for sure. And again, like we talked, there's ways you can structure your deposits so you can get even more insured.
Very good.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we accomplished our goal tonight. Again, why do we do this? I mean, really, there's not a lot of outlets to message in our community, and I thought maybe we have developed an outlet to message. Again, there's not a ton of people that are going to be into this, but the people that are interested, it's now available. They can go back and they can hear you, the local bank president, talk about the system, and hopefully the message can get out.
Exactly. And if anybody has any concerns after watching this still or had some questions, stop by and see me. Yeah. I'd love to talk to you, and this is fun stuff for us to talk about. And it's business as usual for First National Bank. I can tell you that.
I can try to find topics or people of interest, but you know what? There's nothing more interesting than high school athletics, which probably affects 10% of our community. But the next thing of common interest is like 1%. I mean, what's bowling league, banking conversations? I mean, youth athletics have a pretty good bandwidth of community interest, and then the next one, the next interesting thing you can find might be 1%.
It might be, yeah, especially in a small town like River
Right,
Falls,
right.
where there's such great community support, and they do such a great job supporting the kids.
Yes.
And a lot of Wildcat talk for sure.
A lot of Wildcat. And sometime we'll have you back and we'll talk sports. That's actually be a lot more fun.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. So anyway, let's put a big red bow around this tonight, Jeff. Jeff Johnson, President and CEO of First National Bank, here tonight. I'm Kevin Westhouse. Thanks for joining us on our second episode of Tavern Talk, right down here at Tarnation Tavern, where we're solving problems with polite conversations. Until next time, good night, everybody.
Thank you.